Ava is an urban art gallery manager who values art beyond money. Unfortunately, the person she was supposed to marry didn't value her much, which ended in her wedding getting called off 1 week before the date. Her friend/boss, Eugene, notices how out of place Ava is acting, so he persuades her to go on her honeymoon cruise alone, meet different people, and earn an experience that might turn out refreshing for her. In a parallel place, Baldonia lives in a royal family whose son Yosef is himself an art enthusiast, but he has more responsibilities than just admiring art. His valet, Reynalds, doesn't even understand the concept of the abstract art he keeps admiring. The painting called The Brink, made by a famous artist, Tobias Hoffler, lies uselessly in their storeroom because Max, another son of the king, and his wife Katrine got it as a wedding gift. Tired of his shenanigans, like getting a speeding ticket in front of the palace, King tells him to take time to decide whether he wants to be a king or not. Reynolds suggests that they go on a cruise for 2 weeks to secure auction items for the charity event on the gala, right after that, as well as give Joe the solitude to think about this decision. Of course, Joe loves the idea of taking a cruise along the Danube. Ironically, Joe believes it'll be easy to blend in, as he is barely recognized outside of Baldonia. However, while Ava comes on the cruise and is talking to the cruise director, Teddy rushes to handle a situation while Joe comes in, leaving Ava with her notepad. This makes Joe think she is the guide for the cruise, but Ava ignores that and mentions how he seems familiar. This makes Joe conscious as he almost got caught before even the beginning of the cruise. Deciding to get a disguise, Joe decides to trim off his entire beard for the cruise. A decision that he should never regret because the face that comes out of that beard is something that's going to help him a lot on the cruise. Later, when Ava and Joe are invited to the same high tea by the captain of the cruise, Joe gets to know she isn't staff but on a trip herself. Keeping what brings her on this cruise aside for a while, she asks about him. Joe and Reynolds use the part of collecting royal art pieces for charity auction as their reason for their trip. The next day, Ava and Joe meet as she is admiring some street art. Ava tells him she manages modern art pieces. This common interest in art makes their day about looking at street art and enjoying it. Of course, Joe diverts the conversation about Ava's favorite artist, Tobias Hoffler, and his famous The Brink. Sitting in a cafe, Joe notices how Ava's perspective is people paint for passion rather than money. Joe admires this and then asks why she came on this cruise. Ava shares how this was supposed to be her honeymoon cruise, but both of them had a change of heart, leading to the cancellation of the wedding. Joe also hides half the truth and tells her he is on the path to finding himself, as his father wants him to take over the enterprise, but his interests don't align with those thoughts. Joe uses both of them needing some soul-searching as a smooth excuse to stick around her. At night, Joe and Ava are sipping some wine under the starry night when Joe offers her to go to the next palace with him to see the art pieces. Ava prefers sticking to the cruise ship, though. She leaves when Reynolds comes to talk to Joe. He asks what Joe is doing, so Joe tells him he wants to be with Ava right now and is planning on telling her who he is. The next day, the cruise trip is visiting the Ruth Palace in Germany, so Joe adds himself to the list at the last moment. Teddy asks jokingly if he is a fan of castles, making him say it depends on the day, as if his everyday existence is around castles. Well, of course it is, but they don't know that. He sure has a lot of slip-ups for someone who is royalty. Joe admires Ava's perspectives about paintings and opening castles for people to get to know their histories. When Reynolds tells Joe to come pick up the auction painting from the chamber below, Ava wishes to see it too. Joe and Reynolds try to deflect, but then Joe agrees to take her. Reynolds gives him a code word to inform him when the Queen pops up. The two then go down to the chamber and are given 2 covered paintings to choose from. Revealing the paintings, Ava is shocked that Joe managed to convince the royals to offer such famous paintings for charity. But anything is possible if you have strong connections, and she has no idea what Joe's connections exactly are. The two of them describe the paintings as if complementing each other's words and building a story out of a picture using their words. This leads to them choosing one of the paintings easily, as if being with each other made them perfect for their choices. Well, of course, Reynolds comes to disrupt the romance with his code word that the Queen is around. Seeing Joe's dilemma about Ava, Reynolds arranges drinks for them, and Ava joins in as well. After a little talk, Joe escorts Ava away on a walk. The two of them walk to a restaurant where Joe asks about why Ava got out of her engagement. Her fiancé had got a promotion to New York, but he never asked if she wanted to go or not, but just told her. This, followed by other hints, made her take the tough decision to call off the marriage. Joe comforts Ava that she is an amazing person and deserves the best, so she shouldn't doubt herself. The next day, Ava gives Joe the crazy idea to find Tobias Hoffler, as he lives in Linz, and asks him to collaborate with her, as she likes working with artists who don't go after money. Joe wants to avoid the situation, but seeing Ava's enthusiasm, he keeps on helping her. He even rings random doorbells to the buildings, knowing Tobias won't open the door himself. Going inside, Joe keeps himself blended in the background while Ava shares her love for Tobias's abstract paintings. She gives him her card if by any chance he'd like to work with her. Before leaving, she asks him about the Brink, so Tobias tells her it was sold off to some royals. He doesn't remember who. He also tells her it is called the Brain because everyone is always teetering toward the brink of either triumph or disaster. After flirting around and having lunch, Ava shares that they could be a part of the painting party, the winning prize of which is a dinner in Vienna. She also gets a text from Tobias who tells her the Brink was sold to a jewelry store owner to be gifted to the royals. Joe tells her it must not be for sale, but since it happened in Vienna and they're going there, she's got to try. The next day, the painting competition begins. While Joe and Ava put an abstract touch to the painting, Betty and Reynolds make the given scenery as neat as possible. The latter ended up winning, but that was not an issue since Joe already prepared a special dinner for Ava. He takes Ava on a motorcycle to a romantic candlelight dinner filled with fairy lights and the sound of violins. They eat, talk, dance, and finally end up kissing, but Ava tells him they live worlds apart, and the probability of surviving this is very thin. The next day, they go to the jewelry shop, but all Ava gets is sneakily getting a picture of the royals placed in that shop and no other information. She then acts like she isn't ready for marriage yet while choosing rings with Joe so they can casually walk out. However, they are unaware of the stalker lady nearby capturing them secretly. Walking out, she gets to know Max and Katrine are from Baldonia, where Joe belongs too. It is only 2 hours away, but not open to the public, so she can't visit them. Joe deflects the situation to make them hang around the place, ignoring the fact that people still find familiarity in his face even after shaving. On the cruise, Reynolds confronts Joe about his decision. Joe still hasn't made any, so Reynolds suggests taking help from Max, who is coming tonight. Joe refuses to meet him, but Reynolds doesn't allow that, as he sends Max to Joe's room and makes Betty have dinner with Ava to keep her busy. As Joe and Max go for drinks, Joe comes clean about liking Ava and how she doesn't know the truth. Max tells him he supports him and that he should be honest with Ava and introduce her to his parents, as they might be more receptive than he thinks. On the other hand, Betty convinces Ava to give love a chance and live in the moment rather than thinking about the future. The next day, Ava and Joe choose the next painting together as well, and after that, their admiration for paintings soon moves to admiration for each other as they end up kissing, expressing Ava's acceptance of these feelings. However, it is time for the climax, as Joe receives multiple calls from Max, only to get to know that the stalker lady posted a picture of Joe and Ava and used their fake conversation to announce that Prince Joe is getting engaged to a commoner. Joe has to clear this with his father and Reynolds and everyone. Thankfully, Ava doesn't know of it yet, so Joe tells Reynolds to take care of her till he goes and talks to his father and comes back before the cruise leaves Vienna. Joe visits his father, dejected that he might consider him a failure again, but his father comforts Joe that he can never be a failure whether he chooses to be a king or not. On the cruise, Ava gets a text from Tobias agreeing to work with her. As she looks for Joe, she comes across Betty and Reynolds talking about the news with it opened in Betty's iPad. Right when Joe comes back, Ava gets to know the truth, making her devastated because her trust being broken brought her back to square one in terms of self-doubt. Later, Reynolds comes to her telling her Joe only did this selfish thing because she is the first person who gave him an identity other than being a royal. The next day, they stay in Budapest, and Joe tries to talk to her again. Ava is heartbroken at the lack of trust in this relationship and tells him she wishes him well, but they should end this now, also turning down his invite to the gala to meet his parents. Back in the palace, Max and Katrine notice Joe's situation, so Katrine decides to intervene. She sends some dresses to Ava, along with a letter stating how much Joe cares about her and how they all want to meet her too. As the gala begins, Joe tells his parents that he believes Max and Katrine are best suited to be the next king and queen. He also suggests opening the castle as an art gallery for people, which is dearly accepted by them. Katrine comes and escorts Joe to the door. Ava's entry is a surprise to Joe, but just the first meet is enough for his family to like her. As the two dance, Joe expresses how he wants to be with her, since she makes him feel the happiest when around him. After that, he takes her to the storeroom to see the Brink, telling her Max and Katrine decided to gift the painting to them. And of course, this happiness of both opening their hearts and minds to each other is celebrated by a kiss.